Well, we're just motoring down the Bewley River here on a lovely autumn afternoon. Sun will be setting in an hour and a half and we're nearly ready to go home, but I just wanted to talk to you about crew. I've got an interesting crew member on here today who I'll introduce you to in a little while, but thinking about crew, my mind goes back to a day long ago in the West Indies, 1985 it would be, and I had a young man called David who was going to crew for me. Now David he was 18 years old, this lad, and he'd somehow got himself a job with a clockmaker in Chicago, and I was in Tortola, and he wanted to cross the Atlantic in a pilot cutter. So he hitchhiked from Chicago to Tortola. How he got across the sea, I don't know, but he did it somehow. And I've been hanging around there waiting for him, and in the end, because I needed a hand to cross the Atlantic, and in the end I just gave up hope. I thought he'd not made it. Something had happened to him. There was no radio, there was no blooming mobile phones in those days, so I left, and we were sailing out of the harbour at Tortola, and I suddenly saw this chap jumping up and down on the beach like this and waving at me like a madman. I thought, well, it must be him. So we went back, beat back in, and blow me, it was. And we signed him on. He was the best crew we ever had. He had a pair of trousers, just the one, and they were nearly falling off his bottom. They were in such a state, and every day practically a new rip appeared in them, and he kept stitching them up all the way across the Atlantic. He sewed them up with a sail needle and my old sail twine, and by the time we got to the other side, they were really, well, I suggested to him they were worthy an entry in the Tate Modern Art Gallery, and he said they were far too good for that, and well, you might feel he was right, but that's not for me to say. Another crew, Robert, my dear friend Robert, who's recently gone to his reward and is now in the great boatyard in the Sky, and he's probably giving the skipper there a bit of lip as well, because he always told me where I got off, and that was the wonderful thing about Robert. If I got a bit above myself, he'd always tell me, but you know, he was a terrific crewman, never ever quit. He was small, thin as a stick, and he had glasses like beer bottle bottoms. I don't think he could see very much really. In fact, once I said to him, look, Robert, will you leave that buoy to port, that big cardinal buoy up there? It's about 100 yards away. And he looked and he said, I can't see any buoy, skipper. And that's how bad his vision was. But he rode a big motorbike and he survived all that and finally was carried off by the forces of nature. But Robert never missed the colours. Didn't matter what he'd drunk or what his luck had been. At 0800 in the morning he was up there planting the ensign on the stern, and he never missed. And same thing happened at sunset. We'd all be having a drink and having a grand time, and Robert would get up and whip in the colours. Put me to shame really, because I try to get it right, but I sometimes forget. And there was another bloke, fella, I won't mention his name, he won't be listening, but you never know. And he had a favourite song, this bloke. This really wound me up, and it wound all hands up. He was a bit of a sullen sort of guy. He wasn't anybody's favourite really. And he kept singing this song, and he only knew one line, and it went like this. We are just passing strangers now. And that was it. That's all you ever got. And this went on all the way across the ocean, and by the time we got to the other side, we were ready to throttle him. But fortunately he was sick of us as well, and he had his bag packed, so he shot off quick. I never saw him again until about 10 years ago. And this must be 20 years after he'd got off the boat, and I was in the gents' toilet with the door locked, sitting there contemplating my maker as you do in the morning in a marina somewhere, and I heard this voice singing, and it was singing, we are just passing strangers now, and it was him. I could not believe it, but that's how it goes, you know. So if you've got a snatch of song in your heart somewhere, just don't load it up on your shipmates, and don't whistle on board either. People say it's because you don't want to whistle up a wind, but it's not that. It's because it aggravates everybody, so don't do it. Anyway, today's crewman is my mate Mark here. A remarkable man is Mark. He's the MD of DK Fulfillment, as you see here, and he's on here raising money. He's actually rattling the cash box. He's like one of these chaps you see with a Salvation Army hat on, except he's a proper sailorman, and he's working with Turn to Starboard, which is an outfit supported by them. It's also supported by Help for Heroes, what these guys do, they look after and encourage servicemen who've taken a real beating in the modern wars. I mean, God knows, life isn't easy for them today, is it? It never was, but today it must be brutally difficult with all the confusion and the ambiguities. Very, very difficult. And some of them come home in a right mash mess, as we well know, and no fault of theirs, and they're looking after us. So Mark is here to invite you to contribute to what he does. Turn to Starboard is an outfit that looks after servicemen by taking them on the water. It makes sailors out of them, and some of these guys have gone on, they've become certificated yachtmasters, and they've got work and they've got a new career, and it's a marvellous thing that the boys are doing at Turn to Starboard. And Mark is here to remind us of our duty. You'll find them on the internet. Go there and stump up and remember the guys who never forgot us when the chips were down. Cheers, Mark.